everyone. This is Michael Broom, and this is another week, another episode of the Good Father Brand Podcast. Hope everyone has enjoyed their week so far. I just want to, just to say a couple of things before I go ahead and dive into this episode. This episode is on Anchor. It's going to be on Apple Podcasts. That's what I have it on so far. Eventually, it's going to be on other platforms such as Google Play Music and Stitcher and all of those other podcasts. It's still in the works. It's still, working a little kinks out and stuff like that. So just give it a little bit of time, and you definitely will see it on there. This podcast is just getting started. It's going to be eventually bigger and better things. So another thing before I actually, dive into what I'm going to discuss today, I participated in a case conference. It was at UNC Greensboro. It was last week. I just wanted to tell you about that experience. That was pretty cool. I enjoyed it. I've been wanting to do that for the past 2 years. So I finally got the opportunity to talk about that. It's based upon my own research, and the topic that I discussed about was about the future of integration. If you want to see it, I can upload it to you through Facebook, and I got it through Facebook. But if you wanted me to YouTube it or send clips through Instagram or anything like that, just be sure to let me know, and I definitely send that. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. Okay. Now, what I'm going to talk about this episode, and this is episode 9, if I didn't say that earlier, this episode is going to be about, are whoopings necessary to parent effectively? Now, the reason that this came up for me is just because that I'm realizing that, there's different parenting styles that we have experienced. But I feel like with us and, I should say the Black community, that we kind of experience parenting in predominantly a particular way. Now, everybody kind of has this running joke from when we were kids, and it's about, I used to get beat. I used to get my ass beat. I used to get whooped, and and things of that nature. And we kind of say it as a rites of passage. So I just want to, just to introduce that, and that made me think as a parent now of two. It made me think, are whoopings necessary to parent effectively? If we eliminated whoopings completely from raising our kids, would we still have the same result of some people? And I hear it a lot that I grew up in the church, so I used to hear the Bible verses, spare the rod, you spare the rod, you spoil the child. So I want to test that theory, because I know a lot of kids that didn't have whoopings or anything like that as kids, and they end up to being very successful adults. So whoopings actually necessary? So I think that does depends on your experiences. But for most households, most Black households especially, whoopings are a part of your foundation of growing up. It's basically part of your experience. And I can speak from my experience when it comes to that. Like with my I grew up in a single parent household, if you don't know by now, and I got whoopings, but I was pretty much a good kid and a good student in school. So whoopings were me for rare, but when I got them, I got them. So, and it made me think, if I never got whooped, would I be the same person I am today? Would I be that same guy? Would I have that same drive, that same, would I be any different? So that is something that I wanted to, just to bring up and have in your mind, and and I want to share my opinion. If are whoopings actually necessary to parent effectively? And I personally think it's no. I don't think you have to whoop your kids to parent effectively, or you're less of a parent or you're more of a parent if you don't whoop. if you don't participate in whoopings, I feel like mm, I feel like most black households feel like that's the one all and end all. Like that's the thing that we supposed to be doing. That's the only solution of punishment is to beat our kids basically into submission. Now, I'm not saying or looking down on people that actually whoop their kids all the time, but I don't feel it as if that's the only solution. But we as black people in the black household, we feel like that is the only solution. And I feel like that puts a lot of fear in children. I don't think that helps them out in the long run. I feel like whoopings and just beating your kids, I feel like that is a short-term solution, but a long-term problem. I don't think that effectively, you can effectively like raise a child by just whooping them every time something happens all the time. That's going to get old, it's going to get redundant, and in some cases, whoopings don't work. Whoopings don't work for every child. So I think you have to come up with different strategies and different things that you need to focus on in order for you to parent effectively. Now, I'm not saying eliminate whoopings completely, but we shouldn't lean on it as the only solution, as the only thing we're gonna do, as the only thing we're gonna track towards. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair, and that is very traumatizing because all we do is continue to cycle to the next child, to the child after that, to the child after that. And so you're 7, 8, 9, 10 generations in, and all you know is whooping or beating your kids to submission, just to listen to what you have to say. And I'm not talking about like it can be with the belt, it can be with the oh shoot, I done seen kids get whooped by a broom, electrical cord, shoe, whatever they can find. So I'm not saying get rid of it completely, but we do need to come up with other solutions. Now, me personally, I don't whoop my kids. I don't believe in that philosophy. But that doesn't mean my kids are better off than kids that get beat all the time. It's just something that I don't do. Now, my kids are actually good kids. They don't really get into trouble or anything of the sort. And I don't resort to whoopings. I don't resort to that kind of level of violence towards my children because that's very traumatizing. And that's just not my parental philosophy of how I want to raise my kids. So, and for me, my method works. And whoopings don't work for my son anyway. So I'm glad that I don't participate in it and make it go further. What I usually do when it comes to whoopings is that I take stuff away from him. Now that is honestly more effective in talking to him. Now I'm not saying like you need to be your child's friend, but you need to have a certain level of communication because all you do is you beating your kids all the time. You know what they're gonna do when they're gonna get older? They're gonna reject you. And if you're trying to and a lot of times we whoop our kids out of fear. Fear, make them fear us. You know what happens with fear? Fear can be overcame. You can overcome fear. So you have to be careful of what you're doing towards your kids when it comes to whoopings, spankings, beatings, however you want to call it. Long term, it's not going to be as effective. It's weird whooping a 15 to 16-year-old than it is a 8-year-old. So you have to come up with another measure. And I see some parents, they say that once their kids get bigger and taller than them, i.e. most of the times, this is what mothers say to their sons. They pretty much say, since I can't beat them or whoop them, I'm just gonna use my hands. I'm just gonna use the fist. And you're adding insult to injury when it comes to that. Why would you fight your kids? And if they fight back, they're disrespectful and you're gonna kick them out the house. But you're not about to punch them or beat them up either. What are you really getting out of that? Is that really effective parenting? I mean, just thinking, have it out there. Are you really being an effective parent if you're doing that? I personally say no, but you have to raise your kids in a way that you think is best. I'm just trying to give you guys another lane and just something else to be open and something to think about. I think that we should, just be considerate of our children and not make them the victim of how we were raised. And we'd be like, well, it's old school. Kids don't know nothing about getting whooped these days, blah, blah, blah. And I personally don't think that's our only way out. That's our only solution. Like, I'm gonna give you the real reason of why I don't participate in whooping, spankings, excuse me, whooping, spankings, and beatings. The reason that I don't participate in is because it reminds me of what happened during slavery, and we just continue to practice through our kids. The slave master would beat the slave into submission and beat them to make them fear the slave owner. Same process that we go through when we get whooped by our parents. They're beating us into submission because they're punishing us for any wrong that we did. Instead of communicating, instead of having other forms of punishment, you just beat us. And in some people's experiences, they getting beat for no reason. Or they getting beat or whooped for little stuff. Stuff that you shouldn't even whoop your kids for. Like they leave a fork in the sink and you told them to wash the dishes. It's a fork in the sink and you're beating them for that. So you're like, now you're the ego trip. A lot of parents that whoop their kids all the time for little to no reason. You're doing it just to do it. You have an ego problem. You have an ego problem because you know that you can talk to your child any kind of way and they're not going to say anything back because they are codependent on you for shelter, food, and clothing. That is a very messed up way to raise your kids. That is wrong. That's wrong to have this ego power trip. And you know what's going to happen when that kid gets older? That kid might overpower you. And then you're going to act like you're the most disrespected in the world because your child doesn't want to listen to you and your child doesn't care about you and your child doesn't want to hear anything you have to say. And your child is going to be isolated. Your child ain't going to want to talk to you. Your child don't want to communicate with you. Because it's funny how y'all want to communicate with y'all kids 20 years later. But when you had the opportunity when they was 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 years old, you didn't want to do that. You just beat them. And you wonder why they don't want to talk to you. You wonder why kids in this generation don't want to hear it. They're not tolerating that anymore. But you got to deal with this kind of parent that's like that. That's toxic, egotistic behavior. We participate in narcissism every single day when it comes to beating our kids just because we feel like doing it. We feel like they're doing something completely wrong. It's an ego trip. So are whoopings necessary for effective parenting? No. It's not effective. Not long term. Short term, yes. Long term, no. It's not going to be effective. It's not going to work. It's not going to work you being like that permanently. It's a bad idea. 100% bad idea. So, that's my entire, when it comes to that, like I see it too much. I see it too often, and I can't stand it. I can't stand the fact that we feel as if we have to whoop our kids just because of how we were raised. Oh, I ended up good. I can do that with my kids. And you probably jacked up. You're probably super jacked up. You probably experienced a lot of trauma when it comes to whoopings. You probably feel like you can't even be open and be yourself because your personality, who you were, got beat because it wasn't to your parents' approval. Like I said before, short-term problem is a short-term solution, but a long-term problem. So it is what it is at that point. So I'm just saying, like, we just need to alter our perspective when it comes to whooping kids, And I'm not saying like don't do nothing at all. That's the issue with other communities. I should say, well, white community, stuff like that, they receive no punishment. But we feel now when we watch playing the TV, we be like, man, they should be beating their kids. If they whoop their kids' ass, that wouldn't happen. Yeah, but they got a whole other problem. They don't do anything with their kids. They don't do no form of punishment. It's just that in our community, we feel like that's the only punishment to give. So we got to work on that, man. We got to work on that, people, as a family, as a community. We got to work better on not having whoopings as the only form of punishment, because that's not going to work long term. So just want to get that out there. All right.